They didn't even look at me when they pointed. Over there, my mother said, waving a hand as if I were a child wandering too close to the adults. And then I saw it. A table tucked into the corner, low chairs, plastic cups, crayons scattered across the cloth. The children's table. My siblings, every one of them married, polished, holding wine glasses, sat at the long mahogany table, laughing beneath chandeliers that glittered like falling stars. Me. They wanted me to sit beside toddlers as if my 30 years of breathing, building, and surviving meant nothing. My name is Emily Carter. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because I have to ask you, have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? The maitre d' pulled out a child-sized chair. My cheeks burned. My brother lifted his glass in a silent toast, grinning. My sister whispered something to her husband and they both laughed. My father didn't meet my eyes. So I sat. For one long, unbearable minute I sat there, surrounded by coloring books and juice boxes, the laughter of my nieces and nephews echoing in my ears while the clink of silverware from the adult table reminded me of everything I had been denied. I looked down at my plate, chicken tenders. At their table, steak, lobster, champagne. Something inside me broke, but I did not make a scene. I smiled. Quietly. Calmly. I stood up, pushed the chair back, and walked out of the restaurant without a single word. No one stopped me. No one called my name. The night air was sharp, but the silence was sharper. By the time I reached my car, my phone vibrated. 1 call. Then 3. Then 10. 25 missed calls blinking like tiny alarms of guilt. And in that moment, standing in the glow of the parking lot lights, I knew. This was no accident. They had chosen to humiliate me. And they would learn what it feels like to be treated as nothing. I didn't drive home that night. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, staring at the phone as it lit up over and over again. My mother's name. My father's. My sister, even my brother's wife. Not one voicemail. Just missed calls. Like they were afraid to speak, only desperate for me to answer. I let the screen go black. And in that silence, my mind replayed the scene at the restaurant over and over like a cruel film reel. My brother's smug grin. My sister's whisper. The clink of crystal glasses as they toasted without me. Humiliation isn't loud. It doesn't always come with shouting or insults. Sometimes it's quieter, sharper, hidden in the space between where you are placed and where you are not allowed to sit. I thought about every holiday, every birthday, every time they had said, "Emily's fine, she doesn't mind. Emily's independent, she doesn't need help. Emily's strong, she doesn't need a seat at the table." But I minded. God, I minded. I turned the key in the ignition and the headlights cut through the night. I didn't head home. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the city, past bars glowing with neon, past couples walking hand in hand, past strangers who knew nothing of my family's quiet cruelty. I stopped at a gas station. Bought a black coffee I didn't need. Stood under the fluorescent lights, phone still buzzing in my pocket. The clerk asked if I was okay. I lied. When I finally pulled into my apartment hours later, the calls had stopped. But the messages had begun. "Emily, where did you go? Mom's upset, call her. You embarrassed us tonight. You made a scene." A scene. By walking away. I sat on my couch, staring at those words until dawn spilled across the windows. And that's when something in me shifted. I realized they weren't sorry for what they had done. They were sorry I hadn't played along. They wanted me to sit at the children's table, swallow my pride, and smile like it was nothing. And when I refused, when I quietly chose myself, they panicked. That morning, with the sun rising like fire over the city, I decided something I had never dared before. I would stop waiting for them to love me as an equal. I would stop begging for a seat at their table. I would build a table of my own. But first, they needed to know exactly how it feels to be excluded. And trust me, I was going to teach them. The next morning my phone rang again. This time I answered. "Emily." My mother's voice was sharp, clipped, as if she had been holding her breath all night. "Yes," I said evenly. "You embarrassed us. Do you have any idea what people thought when you stormed out like that?" I laughed. Quiet, bitter. Stormed out. "Mom, you sat me with children. With crayons. You didn't even blink when I walked away. Silence. Then the familiar dismissive tone. Oh, Emily. Don't be so dramatic. It was just a seat. Just a seat. The words stabbed harder than any scream. A seat is never just a seat. A seat is place, a belonging, a declaration of worth. And mine had been stripped away in front of strangers. I hung up without another word. My mother's voice cut off mid-breath, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. I spent that day in my small apartment, sketching plans on a yellow notepad. Not revenge that screamed. Not revenge that broke laws or spilled blood. No, revenge that mirrored their cruelty back at them. Elegant. Public. By evening I had an idea. My parents' anniversary was 3 weeks away. A grand affair, always lavish, always flaunted. They'd already sent out gilded invitations to friends, neighbors, co-workers. My siblings would be there, dressed in their polished perfection, basking in borrowed glory. Me. They expected me to show up quietly, sit where I was told, and smile. But not this year. This year I would host my own dinner, on the very same night. I would rent a venue, not just any place but something unforgettable. A rooftop garden downtown with lanterns strung like fireflies, a view of the skyline glittering in every direction. I would invite everyone, extended family, friends, co-workers, people they never expected to see at my table. I would give them steak, lobster, champagne. And at my table, high table, everyone would be equal. When the Carter anniversary dinner began, their seats would be half empty. Guests would whisper, trickle away one by one, following the laughter that drifted from the rooftop across the city. I wanted my parents and siblings to feel what it meant to be dismissed. To look at a room built for celebration and see empty chairs, while somewhere else, life bloomed without them. That night as I lay in bed, the idea burned in me like fire. For once I wasn't the overlooked daughter, the forgotten sister. For once I was in control. And as sleep finally claimed me, I whispered a vow to myself. They sat me at the children's table. Now I'll make sure they don't have a seat at mine. 3 weeks. That's how long I gave myself to turn humiliation into something unforgettable. I started with the venue. A rooftop garden above a boutique hotel downtown. Expensive, yes, but I had been saving for years. Money I once thought would go toward a house, maybe even a wedding that never came. Instead, I poured it into this. The hotel manager raised an eyebrow when I explained my vision. Lanterns strung like constellations, long banquet tables draped in white silk, waiters carrying silver trays of champagne and oysters. A night that glowed, a night that whispered, "This is where you belong." Every detail mattered. The menu. The music. The lighting. I wanted guests to remember it as the night they felt alive, seen, important. And when my family's anniversary dinner collapsed in comparison, when whispers spread about where everyone had really chosen to go, my parents would taste the bitterness of exclusion on their own tongues. I made a guest list. Extended cousins. Childhood friends. Old teachers. My coworkers. People my parents had always overlooked, the ones they deemed unimportant. When the invitations went out, black envelopes with gold lettering, elegant and mysterious, the replies flooded in. Yes. Of course. Wouldn't miss it. Some even wrote back with surprise. Emily, thank you for including us. No one ever does. Those words burned and healed at the same time. By the second week, the whispers had already begun. My sister texted me out of nowhere. What's this party I'm hearing about? I typed back slowly. It's mine. You're not invited. Her reply came within seconds. Childish. I didn't answer. A day later my father called. His voice was tight, measured. Emily, your mother and I have been planning our anniversary for months. People will think it's strange if you host something the same night. Good, I said. Let them think. He paused. This isn't you. You're being spiteful. I smiled into the silence. You're right. This isn't me. It's the me you created. I ended the call before he could speak again. That night, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, wine glass in hand, city lights shimmering below me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel excluded. I felt powerful. I could already see it. The rooftop glowing with light, laughter spilling into the night, the long adult table where everyone had a seat, except them. And I knew without a doubt that when the night came, it would change everything. The night of the rooftop dinner arrived draped in velvet sky. Lanterns swayed in the summer breeze, casting soft gold light across the garden. The city glittered all around us, skyscrapers rising like silent witnesses to what was about to unfold. I stood at the entrance, greeting guests as they stepped off the elevator. Every hand I shook, every hug I gave, it was fuel. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. Old coworkers. Neighbors who once waved from porches but had never been invited inside my parents' home. They came dressed in suits and gowns, their eyes widening as they stepped into the glow of the rooftop. "Emily," one aunt whispered, squeezing my hand, "this is beautiful." And I smiled because it was. Waiters drifted through the crowd with trays of champagne. A string quartet played softly, their music floating like silk. The air was alive with laughter, with conversation that buzzed and grew as the tables filled. Every chair was taken. Every plate glistened with lobster, steak, roasted vegetables. And for the first time in my life, I was the one hosting the table. I checked my phone. Dozens of unread texts. My mother, "Where are our guests? Some haven't shown up." My father, "Emily, what are you doing?" My sister, "This is petty. You'll regret it." I set the phone down and lifted my glass. "To all of you," I said, my voice carrying through the rooftop. "For years I've watched people overlooked, dismissed, told they don't belong. Tonight, every single one of you has a seat at my table. No one here is less. No one here is other. Tonight we are equals." Applause broke out, soft at first, then swelling, echoing off the buildings. Some people stood, raising their glasses high. Tears glistened in a cousin's eyes. And in that moment I felt something my family had never given me, recognition. But as the night shimmered, a ripple moved through the crowd. The elevator dinged. And then I saw them. My parents. My siblings. They stepped onto the rooftop, dressed in their anniversary best. Mother in her sequined gown, father in his pressed suit, my siblings polished like porcelain dolls. They froze, eyes sweeping across the tables, the laughter, the sea of familiar faces that should have been at their dinner. My mother's lips parted in shock. My father's jaw clenched. And then slowly, every head turned toward them. For the first time in their lives, my parents weren't at the center. They were intruders. I stood at the head of the table, glass still in hand. Our eyes locked across the rooftop. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Because the silence told them everything. They no longer had a seat at my table. The rooftop had fallen silent. Only the soft scrape of the quartet's bows lingered, but even that stuttered to a stop when they saw my parents standing there. My mother broke the silence first. "Emily." Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "What is this?" I placed my glass on the table, my hands steady even though my heart thundered in my chest. "This," I said, "is dinner." A ripple of laughter passed through the guests, small, nervous, but undeniable. My parents stiffened. My father stepped forward, his polished shoes echoing against the stone. "You embarrassed us tonight. People left our anniversary party without explanation. They came here." His eyes swept across the rooftop. "Here? To this?" One of my cousins spoke before I could. "Because Emily invited us. Because she saw us." Murmurs of agreement spread like wildfire. My mother's eyes narrowed, scanning the tables. She spotted her sister, my aunt, laughing quietly with her husband. "Clara," she snapped. "You left our table for this?" My aunt didn't flinch. "Emily gave us a seat." "You never did." Gasps. Whispers. The walls my parents had built their entire lives, their flawless image, their control over the family, were cracking right there under the lantern light. My sister stepped forward next, her voice tight, brittle. "You're doing this to hurt us. You think this makes you better." I rose to my feet, the silk of my dress catching the lantern glow. "No," I said, my voice calm but heavy with years of swallowed silence. "This doesn't make me better. It makes me free. For once, I don't need to beg for a seat at your table. I've made my own and look how full it is. I swept a hand over the tables, the laughter, the champagne flutes raised in quiet solidarity. They came because they wanted to, because they felt welcome, because I didn't shove them into a corner like children. My mother's face paled. It was just a seat, Emily. I took a step closer, my heels striking the stone like punctuation. No, Mom. It was my place in this family. And you made it clear I didn't have one. Silence. Then someone at the table clapped. Then another. And another. Until the rooftop was filled with applause that drowned out the city noise, that swallowed the shame curling across my parents' faces. My siblings shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting, unsure whether to stand with me or against me. But I didn't need them anymore. I had already won. Because in that moment, under the lights and the applause, I realized I had built something stronger than revenge. I had built belonging. And yet, I wasn't finished. Not yet. The applause faded into a low hum of conversation, glasses clinking again, laughter rising as though nothing had happened. But I could feel it, my parents' eyes burning holes into me from across the rooftop. They hadn't left. Of course they hadn't. People like them don't walk away. They stay, fuming, plotting how to regain control. My father's voice finally cut through the air. You've made your point, he said, his tone tight as wire. This childish display. I raised a hand and the table fell quiet. No. Not childish. Calculated. I turned, lifting a folder from the chair beside me. Its black leather gleamed under the lanterns. Inside were photographs. Old family pictures, yearbooks, school awards, newspaper clippings, all the evidence of a life they had dismissed. My life. I spread them across the table like cards in a game. Guests leaned in, eyes widening. This, I said, is what it looks like when you're erased. Every holiday where I wasn't in the photo. Every award ceremony where no one showed up. Every milestone ignored while my siblings were celebrated. Do you see the pattern? Do you see what they taught me? That I was an afterthought, a shadow. Gasps. Murmurs. Heads turned toward my parents. My mother's hand shook against her sequined clutch. My father's face turned stone. This isn't necessary, he hissed. It is, I shot back. My voice cracked, but I didn't let it falter. Because for years you told me I was dramatic. That I was imagining it. That I was fine. Well, look around. I swept my arm across the rooftop. Do they think I'm fine? The guests didn't speak, but their silence was answer enough. My sister's husband shifted uncomfortably. Emily, airing family business like this. Family. I snapped. Family is supposed to protect you. Family is supposed to lift you up, not sit you with crayons while they toast with champagne. Family is supposed to make space for you at the table. My voice dropped, softer now but sharp as glass. And when they don't, you build your own. I let the silence hang heavy. Then slowly I gathered the photographs back into the folder, placed it down and lifted my glass once more. Tonight isn't about pity, I said. It's about reclaiming what I was denied. Belonging. Respect. A place. I looked directly at my parents, my siblings, every line of me steady. You don't get to define me anymore. And you don't get to eat at my table. Gasps rippled again as I turned to the waiting staff. Please, I said softly. 2 waiters stepped forward and, with quiet professionalism, guided my parents and siblings toward the elevator. They protested, of course. My mother's voice was shrill, my father's commands brittle with rage. But no one helped them. Not one guest moved. The elevator doors slid shut. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being excluded. They were. And the night had only just begun. The elevator doors closed on their protests and a hush swept over the rooftop. Then, as if a spell had broken, the music swelled again. Guests lifted their glasses, conversations resumed, laughter poured back into the night air. But for me, everything had shifted. I stood at the head of the table, lanterns glowing above like captured stars, and looked at the faces before me. Some I knew well, some I hadn't seen in years, but all of them sat together equal, smiling. No hierarchy. No corners. No children's table. For the first time I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter, the shadow, the outsider. I felt whole. I raised my glass once more. To every person who has ever been pushed aside. To every person told they didn't belong. Tonight you belong. And may you never let anyone take your place away again. The cheer that followed shook me to my bones. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed, and I could feel it, healing. Not just mine but theirs too. Across the city I imagined my parents' dinner, half-empty tables, whispered questions, a hollow echo where their control used to be. They wanted perfection. They got absence. They wanted to humiliate me. They humiliated themselves. Me. I didn't need them anymore. I had built something stronger than revenge. I had built my own family, my own table, my own worth. Later that night, as the last guests drifted away and the rooftop grew quiet again, I stayed behind. The lanterns flickered low, the city lights shimmering all around me. I thought about the little girl I once was, the one who begged for a seat, who tried to be small enough, quiet enough, grateful enough to be loved. And I whispered to her, "You made it. You're home now." I gathered the last empty glass, set it on the table, and let the silence settle like peace in my chest. The cycle was broken. The wound had closed. The story was mine. Completed.